everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle, and with me shortly will be Diana. She's just running a few minutes late, but we are moving ahead, and she'll get here when she gets here. And we, of course, are so excited to welcome TJ Alexander back to the show. We're going to be discussing their newest book, which is Chef's Choice. And if you remember, was it last year already? A year ago?
Last May.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yes, last year. We had TJ on the show to discuss Chef's Kiss. And this is the second novel in that universe. So thank you so much for making time for us, TJ. We're so happy to have you back on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So for readers who may not yet be familiar with Chef's Choice, can you give us an overview of this story?
Sure. So Chef's Choice picks up kind of where the first book, Chef's Kiss, leaves off, although you don't have to read one to enjoy the second one. This book focuses on Luna, who is roommates with a main character from the first book. She loses her job at the start of the story and is sort of forced to accept a wild proposal from a young man who is the heir to a culinary fortune, but can't collect until he does a series of really ridiculous things, and he needs a fake girlfriend to help him do that. So she agrees to pretend to date him for an absurd amount of money, and together Luna and Jean-Pierre go on kind of a shenanigans-filled foodie adventure.
Which, you know, for a rom-com, we love hoops, and we love that word doesn't want to come out. We love shenanigans. So really, and food, when you throw food in, it's really kind of the trifecta of rom-com.
Yeah, it's got everything you need.
So now this came out on May 30th, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. So you're still very much in the haze of pub month.
Oh, I think the haze is gone. The veil has lifted. I think after the first week or so, a lot of the kind of chaos dies down. And right now I'm just kind of in the exhausted phase. So, which is fine. It's a good phase to be in.
It's a time-honored phase of the publishing process, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So I know Luna was a fan favorite from book one. Now, what was that like to get back into that world and kind of get into Luna's headspace and see the world through her eyes, where from book one, it was always that third person narrative where we were seeing Luna?
Yeah, I was very lucky. My first book deal with my publisher Atria was a 2-book deal, and Chef's Kiss was obviously my debut. The second book was kind of a big question mark for the first year or so. And I knew that I really wanted to tell a story about Luna. She was such a force, even as a side character in the first book. She just had a lot of that main character energy that we all love. And she's fun to write. So when I pitched the idea of let's give Luna a love story, I was very lucky that everyone was on board and thought that was a fun idea. And so then it was kind of just a matter of figuring out okay, who does she get to, who should I make her fall in love with? I went through a lot of different options of coming up with original characters or other side characters from the first book, thinking of how she would, interact with a bunch of different kinds of personalities. And then I landed on Jean-Pierre, who is, if you've read the first book very, very closely, he is alluded to only very briefly, not even by name. I think it's like
Ooh.
one line that mentions that this very famous celebrity chef that everyone loves and is a beloved, TV star, that she has a grandson. And I was like, let's just do that. He'll be French, he'll be insane, he'll be my best friend. And it was, Jean-Pierre just sort of came out of that necessity. So I was very happy to meet him once he showed up.
I love that moment where you're trying to figure out a character or a love interest or whoever needs creating, and you're looking through your work and it's like, oh, there you are. Where
Yeah,
have you been hiding?
I love the idea of writing a love story about two people, both of whom are trans. Luna's a trans woman, Jean-Pierre's a trans man. And the idea that, like, Luna is a kind of, for New York, not the richest person in the world, just kind of struggling to get by in a lot of ways. And Jean-Pierre is fantastically, just ridiculously wealthy, and for him money is no object for anything, and that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun to write. My agent was sort of like telling me before I had like fleshed out this outline, like, oh, people aren't into billionaires anymore, like millionaires and billionaires romance, that's kind of passe, because now there's sort of like, people are really wary of them. A lot of real life millionaires, I'm sure are a little villainous, not our favorites these days.
That's fair.
Yeah, but I was like, yeah, but he's gonna be trans, so that's completely different. That is a fantasy that I would love to inhabit. So that's what we did.
Plus, I would love, I mean, my personal dreams of wealth are being able to fill up my car without going, oh my god, this is gonna cost how much, or go to Target and just have one of those crazy Target shopping sprees and not stress out while everything is being rung up at the checkout stand.
Sure.
So
I'm the same way. My modest dream is like, someday I will be able to regularly buy the good cheese, instead of like the store brand cheese, like, which is fine. It's like, it's still cheese, but like once in a while I like see the good cheese and the fancy cheese case, and I'm like, one day. One day
I'll come back for you.
Yeah, wait for me.
So we have stumbled upon the food conversation, so we have to have that, because I remember last time we were here we had the baking conversation, and I loved that, and all the recipes. If I'm remembering correctly, you tried out some of the recipes that Simone was playing around with. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, for the last book, I kind of wrote the book with the recipes, kind of being fictional off the top of my head, and then ended up having to make them in real life for marketing purposes, which was fun, and showed me how difficult like writing recipes and coming up with instructions for real life actually is. And I was more prepared in this book. Like when I saw like certain things that these characters were going to have to make, I was like, okay, some of these things are so off the wall and so like high class hot cuisine that like no real person is ever going to make this. So there's no point in trying to be realistic with the fancy recipes. So I was just kind of like, being a little bit tongue-in-cheek with those and coming up with like some jokes about things that aren't even like, I think, physically possible with a lot of these items. Like, I don't think you can whip ramps. I don't think you should serve a chilled sung choke soup. I think that's all a bad idea. That was just jokes. Nobody please do that. But then there's like another side of the book where the characters, Luna and Jean-Pierre, are learning to cook just like from scratch almost. Like they really do need to start with like the basic stuff because they're both very bad at cooking in the beginning. So what they really end up learning is like how to make comfort food for each other. And for those sorts of things, I was like, okay, I just need to know how to make these things. I can make these things and tell people how to make these things. So, so yeah, it was all cheese based for the most part. And I'm good at that stuff in real life. So it wasn't a hardship.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to Luna. I mean, I can crack an egg. I think I've mastered eggs and
Good.
the
Yes.
very, yeah, I mean it's a, building block, but beyond that, I can do it. Whether or not it'll taste good is, I guess, really the conversation. So I can relate to her.
Well, I mean, I didn't learn to cook until I was an adult. Like, this was for me very much theoretical in a lot of ways, So I think a lot of people, especially when they're first learning how to cook, feel very intimidated. And really, I don't know. I think that like Luna, as long as you learn like 2 or 3 things that you really, really enjoy making, then you're pretty good. Like, you can kind of just like, ride those coattails for the rest of your
Right.
life, as far as I'm concerned.
That's been my end, find someone who knows how to cook, which really kind of helps you out
Yeah, if you
as
can
well.
find a rich husband who wants to cook for you instead of you
Right.
doing that, that's actually ideal. Like,
Perfect world that,
yeah,
or wealthy enough to afford a private chef, which would
yeah,
also be a satisfactory alternate.
that would be fine. I would accept that.
So now moving on from a writing aspect, anytime an author is able to bring past characters in, it's like I get so excited. It's like running into friends at a coffee shop and catching up and seeing what's been going on with their lives. I just love that you get to see Simone and Ray and see what's going on with them and where they are. I guess it's kind of the same question from Luna's perspective, just viewing Simone through that detached third person, narrator. Was it? Did you have any challenges, like to not slip into her voice when you were writing her in the scenes?
I think so. Yeah, Luna's pretty strong. she, she's really commanding your attention when I was writing this book from her point of view. So I don't think I had an issue with that. I think the things that surprised me were, from Luna's point of view, viewing Ray and Simone, who are the couple from the first book, was sort of like figuring out how all these different characters would interact with each other. Originally, I had in my head, or in a very vague outline, this idea that, like, well, Jean-Pierre would meet these characters, and he's very French. And so I had in my mind, like, it probably wouldn't go very well. He'd probably be very rude or something, or, he and Ray would probably like clash. I had this idea in my head that they would be like enemies. And then I realized that made no sense. As soon as they got together in a room, I was like, oh, they're best friends. Like, these two
Mhm.
people, like, narratively, Jean-Pierre needs to find, a support network, and he needs queer friendships, which is something that he hasn't had in his life before. And so when he meets Ray, who's non-binary, but, trends towards mask, they just kind of hit it off and had this like very cool bromance that I just was delighted by. And seeing that through Luna's eyes, and she's a little like shocked at first at how quickly they fall in bro love with each other, I think. But she's very charmed by it all, and charmed to see that, like, this guy that she's taken under her wing in a way, as his fake girlfriend, has kind of flourished under her direction. So yeah, that was fun to see.
Mhm. And and I know we had talked about in Chef's Kiss, how you had some readers reach out to you and say this was one of the first books that they had really read with a non-binary character, and it was a really great experience as a reader to just see a different perspective and see that representation in fiction. And of course with Chef's Choice, you have even more representation with Luna and Jean-Pierre both being trans, what does that mean to you to be able to just continue that representation and create these characters that more people will be able to connect with and relate to and see themselves in fiction?
Yeah, I mean, I don't set out to write any of my books by thinking like, okay, like, this is going to be about a trans person, or this is going to be about, XYZ. It just, to me, it's very natural to tell these stories because this is how I am experiencing the world as a trans non-binary person, is that like there are these stories that we have that are not, the kind of tragic bummers that you might get in a lot of other forms of media where trans people have historically been represented, in some small way, if at all. And, I personally wanted to see a romance between two trans main characters. I thought that was going to be really interesting and funny. It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen more than one trans person in a room, but like, it's very funny. We're incredibly hilarious, and like our lives are filled with lots of funny anecdotes and things that we need to argue about and discuss. So there was a lot of opportunity for jokes and laughs in that. But also, I end up, publishing these books and hearing like really cool stories from people who, I had a bookseller reach out to me on Instagram the other day who was like, I handed your book to somebody and was like explaining to them what it was. And when they heard it was a T for T romance, they just like burst into tears because they were just so happy. They had never like seen one of those, traditionally published before. And that was like, that's really cool. Like, that makes me feel good. Like, I don't want to make people cry, but if it's in a good way, like, then I don't mind.
Right. Yes. I mean, there are the plot, I mean, depending of course on the book, there are the moments when, as writers, maybe we do want to make our readers cry a little bit, but good tears are definitely better or happier than than sad. Why would you do this to my character tears?
That's just the kind of books I write. I like to write funny books. So if there is any tears, then hopefully there's like, some fun stuff as well happening is my
right
goal.
And now we did mention it at the beginning that we love the hoops and the shenanigans and all the chaos that comes with rom-coms because they are required. But the challenges trope of, in this case, Jean-Pierre inheriting, having to meet these benchmarks.
I don't know what you would call it. I guess like an inheritance scheme is a trope, like
Oh, okay, that's
having
right.
to get married, but like not for real, or whatever, in order to inherit something. Like that is a time-honored trope in romantic comedies for sure. And as I was kind of like putting together the plot of this, like, I'll be the first one to say, it doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. Like, just like legally.
It's not required to make sense.
That is exactly where I landed. I was like, I have read so many romances and watched so many movies where straight people have this like very similar, like, oh, we gotta do this so that I can inherit and no one bats an eye. And I was like, I'm just gonna do it then, because like, otherwise it's homophobic to not let me do it. So you have to let me do it, is basically like how I was coming at it. And luckily my editor was like, oh no, 100% I agree, it does not have to make sense. Like, who needs anything to make sense? Like, as long as it ends with like the reader getting what they want, hopefully, which is, people who don't know each other that well needing to pretend to know each other really well and being forced into close proximity, which is like, the delicious fake dating trope is so good, because like we love seeing that, and it's funny. It gives you a lot of chances for extremely funny run-ins with people who, oh, we gotta like, sell this, we gotta like convince people, like, okay, like Sure. Would people in real life be really like investigating this, with like a monocle in their eye going like, do they seem like a real couple to me? Like, of course not. In a heightened comedic situation like this, I think that it's 100% fine. Like just so that people can like relax, like, sit back, enjoy the wild ride. Like that's what it's all about, is just like, just and in this book especially, Jean-Pierre is like, not only do I need to have a fake girlfriend, I also have to learn how to cook, which I've never done. And it's just like, yeah, obviously it's silly, but that's it's funny. It's very funny. So I'm glad that some people have a good time with it.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in a lawyer's office if someone was, laying out these requirements in their will. It's like, oh, okay, so you want your grandson to do what? And
I can't recommend it legally.
I mean, it's your will, but
I have several friends who are lawyers, and I've actually asked them, I'm like, as we all know, like there's this, idea that in romance novels, there's always some will, like the last will and testament of some grandfather, and you've got to like marry somebody or do all this stuff to inherit, and that would never happen in real life. And I've been informed that actually you can put whatever you want in your will. Like, no one can stop you. No one can say like, oh, you can't put concessions or whatever they're called. So like, I felt very vindicated to be like, okay, so you can do it. It's an absolute, like it's a wackadoodle move for sure. But like, if people wanted to do it, they could. And, I'm so happy to hear that, because now I really want to do something like that with my own will.
So it does make sense. Like it...
For a certain kind of fictional character, it makes total sense.
For an interesting grandfather who, I mean, that's a choice. He made a choice for his grandson. And I don't think I've ever once looked at a couple and went, oh, they're fake dating for sure. Like that is not, they have to be fake dating.
I've met couples in real life who I'm like, God, I hope they're fake dating. But like, I know that that's not true. I know that they're a real couple and they shouldn't be.
Like, we're just gonna present this trope as an option for you to decide if you want to just say, we've been fake dating this whole time. None of it was real.
I think some people should go for it.
Oh, hi.
Hi, I made it. I fixed my technical issues.
Sorry, so Diana has joined us. I just saw your text message come through that you couldn't hear us, and I was like, we don't see you. So welcome. We have been talking about wackadoodle wills and the clauses that require people to jump through hoops that one can really only find in rom-coms.
I love those wackadoodle loopholes in the wills, and they're really not that offhand. I've come across quite a few in my day working as a estate planning paralegal, and we like to call it controlling from the grave.
Yes.
Yeah, those are some fun wills.
I bet. Like, I would never actually do it, but just knowing that I can feels very comforting. Like,
it's like, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love the idea of just instigating drama even after death. Like, just making nonsense occur for no reason.
Oh, my favorites were the ones where they had the estates left to the pets, and people had to be like, okay, you have to get, you only get $1,000 a month for taking care of my pet for the lifetime of the pet. However, you must take them to X number of doctor's visits, X number of grooming. You must show an accounting. Oh, like the whole 9 yards, as if the pet was a child. Those are my favorites. And I one day want to be that person when it comes to my tortoise.
Yeah, I'd love to be petty. Like, I would love it.
Just like maybe like slip like one thing in there, like one, harmless but just super inconvenient thing, action
Sure.
requirement. Nothing, maybe not take my dog to, the highest end groomer you can find, but just something minor to remind them so they don't forget about you.
Yeah. Don't forget who's
Right.
watching you. My ghost is always there.
Right. So this was book 2 in the Chef's Kiss series. Are there any plans for a book 3?
Not at the moment. I mean, I guess we'll see how this sells. Like, to be honest, I guess we'll find out together if there's ever a book 3. But for the moment, I have a lot of other projects coming down the pike. I have another book coming out this year, also with Atria. It's a holiday rom-com. It comes out December 5th. It's called Second Chances in Newport Stephen, and it is about a trans man who is, about to turn 40, and he comes home to his South Floridian hometown for the holidays and reconnects with his very first boyfriend, his ex from high school. So,
well, we will have to keep an eye out for that one as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be great.
And so that's 2 books in. That's a lot of stamina, I feel like, for writers.
Yeah, like I said, my exhausted era is I'm in it now. I'm just exhausted all the time. And then there's another book that's coming out. It hasn't been announced yet, but it'll come out around this time next year. And then another book the year after that. So stuff is happening. Y'all can't get rid of me.
That is wonderful.
You're just going to have to keep coming back all the time.
I'd love to.
And we're going to have to send you we don't actually have them, but I think we need to create the punch cards.
Ooh.
Because we've actually had our first author on the show 5 times, and it has been a long running joke with us that once you come on the show 5 times, the 6th time we come to you.
I would love that. I was like, do you get a free coffee? Or oh no, okay. Well, I mean, if you want to bring coffee, that would be great, but we don't have to.
We bring
Michelle's good with the cleanup, I'm good with the wine, and we'll be great.
And we'll bring the good cheese. We'll bring the good cheese too.
Oh, that's definitely worth it. That's for sure worth it.
So really, I mean, between this year, you will have already hit 3. So it's not that much longer before.
Yeah, it's not impossible. We can do it if we try.
It is an achievable goal.
Yeah, I love those. Those are my favorite kind.
Right?
Great to have goals.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, Chef's Choice is now out in the world, of course. So if you would like to order your own copy, be sure to check out our show notes. The link to our bookshop on bookshop.org is always in there, and you can order your own copy. As always, bookshop.org supports our incredible writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And TJ, book number 3 in December, we're going to have to work this out so we can check another punch off the punch card for you.
I love that for sure.
And thank you so much for making time for us. I had so much fun chatting with you, and I know Diana did, even short though it was. I felt like,
it was great to see you both again. Yeah.
But thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.